from a large vehicle to a small vehicle. And this is like the large vehicle with like vehicle.
Welcome all. Yeah, I can hear myself. Welcome all to the second session about MaaS, about building a door-to-door app. My name is Roelof Hellemans. I'm the moderator of this great session and with this great panelist. And we will not talk about how to build an app. We will talk about what's necessary to build a good app and what are the real important outputs where we can work with. A little bit different than how to code. It's what we want to use and how we want to use the output of an app. I have 4 panelists with me. And please introduce yourself, because I think everybody really are keen to know you.
Hello everyone, can you hear me well? Yeah? So my name is Yoann Kienne. I'm in charge of MaaS and transportation on demand projects in Transdev, which is a public transport operator worldwide. And we operate MaaS projects in Saint-Étienne, which is called Numuvisi, and in Mulhouse with the Compte Mobilité. Thank you.
Morning everyone, my name is David Koral. I'm the director of the partnership team at Freenow. So Freenow is a MaaS platform, actually with a little bit of communication on top that becomes a mobility super app. Like the marketing team is looking at me, so I have to say it right. So we operate in Europe, pretty much all the countries, and we're coming from the ride hailing, but we also offer car sharing, scooters, e-bikes, and e-mopeds.
Hello everyone, my name is Alexandre Cabanis. I'm a CMO of Ubitransport, 11 years old, automated fare collection French company. Well, at least we come from fare collection services, and we're heading towards serving the core base for intermodality.
All right, yeah, it works. I'm Pauline Baudens. I'm a research fellow at the University of Taltech in Estonia, in Tallinn. And so I try to look at how digitalization transforms the day-to-day life of women in India and in Congo. And in parallel, I'm working in an association called Trufi, which map informal transport in the global south and do map MaaS.
Thank you. And all these 4 panelists have quite a lot of experience on how to build an app. But let me start first with what's a real effective app? When are you really happy with the app and the results? Please.
So, I think that if you look at the features of the applications on the market, they're almost all top-notch. But if you look at the stumbling blocks that hinder those applications from being massively used, I see 3 of them. The first one is that, of course, all of players are taking the end user into account. But getting into his mind to reduce car solo and thinking about nudge when he has to think, okay, today, car or mobility, that's something pretty tricky, and we didn't crack the code yet. And we need to be several of us to crack the code. The second stumbling block that I see is that, well, less and less often, hopefully today, we regard MaaS as first getting a good application. But the best application of the world need to rely on a healthy, sound technological base that links together not only transit, but transit, shared mobility, infrastructure. And the stumbling block number 3 I see is that, well, players like us, people coming from ticketing, they have hard times getting to work together. And today, the players of today that will make it tomorrow are not the best one in terms of product, but they're the best one in terms of teamwork.
Cracking the nut, teamwork. David, how are you cracking the nut? What are you doing to make sure Freenow is doing what they're proposed to do, delivering?
First, offer top quality service. Like the user experience is very important for us. So we want to offer the best services in all the cities that we serve. And to do that, like we partner with the best brands and the best operators. So we started actually with partnerships with private companies, with mobility service providers like Cheer, Voice, Sixt, ShareNow, which are deeply integrated in our platform. And now, like, to really crack the nut, as you're saying, like, we're also partnering with public transit. So we have a first pilot in Germany, actually, where we're able, like, to sell public transit tickets directly in the Freenow app. That's in Düsseldorf. And the landscape also in Germany is moving quick, like in the direction of public transit, with the €49 ticket coming soon. So that's also something we plan to offer and bundle with the other services, like to echo a little bit like what the previous panel was saying, like in Berlin, like Yelp is doing it in Berlin. They do it great. They do a fantastic job. We do it in all the cities in Europe. Like that's our target, and that's what we want to do everywhere, basically.
And how is the public transport in this one? Because it's very important. We all name it the backbone of MaaS is public transport, but how do you make sure that the public transport is in the right position?
The first question you asked was about when are we happy about a MaaS application. I'll say that I'll be happy with the MaaS application when we can observe modal shift from private car to public transportation, of course, but shared mobility in general. The idea really in the MaaS project that we are operating right now in Saint-Etienne and in Mulhouse, and I think in the most of all of them, is that public transport is really the backbone of the whole modes and of the whole consumption within the app. So that's really important not to forget public transportation, and I'm really happy that Freenow, which is really private-oriented operator, includes public transportation, because the idea really in developing MaaS application is the main objective should be to make modal shift happen. So that's really the main objective of all the applications that are designed.
David, please.
Just to echo that, actually, like when we survey our user base, because like we have like millions of users in Europe, like, and especially the B2B users, like, and we ask them like what type of service would you like to see on the app? Like the first answer is obviously public transport. Like that's what people want to use. Like, and talking about mobility and success of a MaaS platform without including like public transport is a nonsense. You know, like public transit is the key, is the pillar of transportation. That's what the cities need first, and then everything else like is coming on top of it. You know, like that's very important and very clear for our users as well.
Yeah, just to follow on this idea, well, we have to admit price is still a trigger for the end user. So we have to push the PTAs to set new combined tariffs in their fare grid to mix the different modes, public transport and shared mobility, and getting your park for a day in the park and ride at a new price.
One of the nuts that you are referring to is the proposition, but how can we make sure that we get the right people in there? From your side, how can we make sure that women are more attractive to use public transport as you study?
We use public transport. Indeed, to provide this inclusivity through the app, it's actually a big challenge. Because, so actually, women tend to use much more public transport than the men, because often they, due to the mobility habit, due to domestic responsibility, so they have shorter trips, they do shorter trips and more frequent during the day. That's a reason why they use public transport. So actually, the MaaS application is pretty relevant for them to like try to promote it through women. Also, something which is interesting to implement within the MaaS application is to make safety features to ensure that, not to ensure, but to maybe report when women get harassed or things like that, that they can feel safer at least. It's just a question of feeling. Did I answer the question?
That's a question of feeling is always a good answer. Smart people noticed that Saad has also joined us. He had the same issue I had, a little bit delayed by public transport.
Indeed.
Saad, please introduce yourself and we can include
So,
you in the panel.
hi everybody. Sorry for the time lapses. I'm Saad, representing meep. We are a MaaS company based in Madrid, and a pleasure to be here. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Matt. Cracking the nut, making sure that we got the right output, connecting all mobility modes, making sure that we can connect with the same technique, with the same, I don't want to call it standards, APIs, but we can use it. The next real issue will be, what are we going to propose? What is the proposition? How can we align? David just mentioned it. How can we align to make sure that public and private is talking together to make sure that we are doing the right approach? Is there anybody who feels that we are heading in the right direction? Yeah.
Well, I want to ask you the question, do you think that a normative frame like the MDMS in Europe could be a part of the solution?
That's a good question. Yes, that's the first step necessary to open up for all mobility modes, for all ways to provide services, and to make sure that we can produce interoperability for all cities, all regions, all nationals, to make sure that we can provide a better offering. We MaaS Alliance, think if you're owning a car, great, you own a car, but every time you use a trip, you should be making aware what are the possibilities and how can you use a trip with all modes to make sure that sustainability is less, cost is very important, and time to market is very important. So how do you make your decision to make your trip, and how can we make sure that that proposition is in there? So I'm very keen to continue talking about what's the 49 euro deal, what's the effect, who are we going to who is going to use it, and how are we going to communicate it to make sure that they will use it? Can we get the persons out of the car and use public transport? MDMS or MDMS and Amentis and all the regulation right now, it should all be about making sure interoperability is facilitated and services are open for everybody. David, please.
Coming back to your question, I think we're going in the right direction. Definitely, with these type of frameworks, but we also have challenges which are not resolved yet. So access to public transit, for instance, to as many platforms as possible, as many users. At the end, no matter which app you use, the cities should be willing to promote public transit. So some cities decide to restrict the access to public transit to their own platforms, or these type of solutions are obviously blocking the development potentially of a bigger usage of public transits. Also, if you think of combining tickets, there's a lot to be done on the regulatory side, because it's very complex legally to bundle a ticket which is subsidized by the government or the city together with a ticket of a privately owned company. So these type of challenges need to be solved as well, if we want to offer the best to the users, I believe.
Yeah, the app is also one thing, but the thing is, if the public transport is not there, or in the case of Global South, they miss often transport infrastructure, but as well as then, because they miss that, the offer is taking over through private operators, and there are multiple very often, and informal transport and stuff like that, and it's really a big challenge to actually integrate them through an app. But to do so, it would be very interesting actually to improve public transport.
Just wanted to jump on the private-public cooperation. So at Transdev, we operate as the PTA is our client, basically, so we answer to them. The idea, and within the MDMS initiative, what I think is really interesting is that all the MDMS projects should have link with the SUMP, you know, the Sustainable Urban Mobility Planning and everything. So that's really interesting because it's an incentive also for the private to operate and to answer to all the ecological, economical and social objectives of the PTA. So that is really interesting. I don't know how they will do it, but I think that the idea to say the private should answer the public common good is really good. No?
To rephrase that one, if we're not aligning, we're not delivering. Yeah. And if we're not delivering, we will lose the fight against climate. And I think we need to align to make sure that end users are served. And how are you doing this? Because now we're having this nuts and we're talking about the output. But what is the real obstacle right now where you are facing? Is it the connection of operators? Is it the user interface? Is it the app itself? Or is it the output, the proposition? What is MEEP concern?
Well, you know, I don't think it's the app itself at this point. You know, like thankfully we are all, MaaS has developed handsomely in the last few years. If I had to mention a particular challenge, especially as a business developer working in partnerships and so on, it's probably the capacity to make everybody work together and everybody that's so different. When one of the challenges we find is that when dealing with a private operator, for example, it has nothing to do, for example, it's nothing to do with dealing with a public, with a PTA, or with a like older bus operator, for example, in Spain. They are completely different animals. You have, on the one hand, authorities, on the other hand, tech startups like us, and then you have like more traditional transport operator who are, a business in and of itself. And the biggest challenge, in my opinion, is really to make all these parties and plus the micromobility and so on work together. And that's the big one.
What are your biggest challenges if you look at the biggest challenges that you are facing right now?
The biggest challenge, indeed,
Go ahead.
It come back to it's as an association working, so doing mapping of public transport and informal transport, all kind of transport in the global south. The big challenge is indeed to the schedules, for example, of the buses or stuff like that are very complex in the informal transport. So it's something we definitely face, and also the just making money out of it. Also, we are an association, so we don't really search of making money, but it's actually something which still it's a maintenance cost to have an application and to also provide a good service with like good information, transport information, and so to update all those GTFS file. And this is pretty indeed challenging, and so we go through grants and tenders, but doesn't have for the future. And so it's something we are actually trying to cooperate with companies, or also with the municipalities when they are willing to cooperate with us for the future, and also with the local community where we try like to work with them to ensure.
Yeah, thanks. Alexandre, what are your biggest challenges?
Well, Saad just told them. It's incredible how tough it is to align. To align the end goal is pretty easy. We all want to reduce car solo. But to align the business models and to make some people understand that the business model of yesterday, of today, are not the ones of tomorrow, that's the biggest challenge.
Yeah. David?
As I said before, like the main challenge is to have access to public transits, like integrate them inside our app, be aware of what's coming next. Autonomous cars are coming. Like how does that work with our app, and know like exactly like what's coming next, and make sure they're available like to offer the best service to the people in the Freenow app, and be profitable as well is a bit of a challenge.
As I said, I'm really PTA oriented, and I see Laurent there from the CEREMA, and we had a big discussion about how can we measure the effects of MaaS, because that would be really key in order to say, okay, so that what MaaS is bringing to the table, so let's develop it. And if we don't have this evaluation of impact, we'll never say if MaaS is really a big player in the modal shift. So I think that making possible to measure the impacts of MaaS is really the big key and the big challenge.
I've got 1 million questions for you, because is that going to be an environmental impact? Is it going to be business impact? Is that going to be working together? Is that going to be accessibility or user satisfaction? Is that user behavior, the model shift? What are we looking at?
Yeah, you don't have a KPI, a fixed KPI, so that's really hard first. And then is really MaaS the key to make model shift happen? Isn't it the offer, the quality of the offer, and the accessibility and everything? So that's really hard, but I think that a good basis is a good public transport, of course, and micro-mobility offer. And then the MaaS could really organize it and bring data to the PTA. So that's really, it's at the middle, but the basis is, for me, the transport offer.
Remember that, cracking the nut, transport offer. It's about the offering. You mentioned it already, what your biggest challenges are. Is there anybody who wants to reply? I thought you want to reply, Alexandre. Oh.
Well, once again, I'm sure you have some ideas of what are the KPIs to say, okay, now we're on the good path to intermodal journey. Because, of course, the offer is very important and critical, but we won't replace car solo with good single leg journeys. No. Intermodality is key. So what are the KPIs that will tell us, okay, we're on the good way?
That's the easiest question I could have today. Every trip you make, you have to decide what you want to do with your trip. If it's below 500 kilometers, don't use a train, but don't use a plane, but use a train. That should be a better proposition offered to you. So we should work on the propositions to make sure that you choose wisely. And that's for everybody, to make sure that you make the proposition wise and also touchable in your wallet, touchable in the environment. And that's the user behavior, the change of the behavior of a person. How can we facilitate him? Last one, David.
Yeah.
I have to stop. We have to stop. Before we stop, thank you very much, guys. It was great to have you on this panel. Give them a big hand. We really loved it.